Statistically speaking, survival in the Wild West wasn't just about quick draws and rattlesnakes. Sometimes it came down to whether you had a single cow left standing. Droughts turned proud ranchers into beggars, banks circled like vultures, and desperate men found themselves making deals they never imagined. And while dime novels might make you think every cowboy was a rugged hero with endless cattle and luck on his side, the truth is harsher, stranger, and often far more desperate. Take Ezekiel Marsh, for example. 3 months without rain, his herd, reduced to dust and bones, and the bank breathing down his neck. By all accounts, he should have walked away, handed over the land, and faded into history like so many nameless men did. But instead, he found himself at the altar, marrying a woman he barely knew, the heaviest bride in the territory, in exchange for one breeding cow. It wasn't romance, it wasn't choice, it was survival, stripped down to its cruelest form. Now, we all like to think we'd survive the Wild West with grit and glory, but let's be honest, most of us would have folded long before Ezekiel did. Tonight, we're going to walk you through a story where dignity was bartered for livestock, where a locked bedroom door became the start of a deadly game, and where justice came not from six-shooters at high noon, but from secrets, betrayals, and the weight of truth. But before we step into this tale of drought, deceit, and unexpected courage, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with someone who thinks they'd have lasted 5 minutes in the Old West. Trust me, after this story, you'll see just how wrong they are. The drought had sucked the marrow out of the land like a vulture picking bones. For 3 months, not a single drop of rain had fallen on Ezekiel Marsh's ranch. His once mighty herd of 100 head had wasted away until their ribs pressed against hide-like fence rails before collapsing one by one into the dust. Now the ranch was nothing but brittle soil and silence, save for the cruel rustle of dry wind against the barn's rotting planks. Ezekiel carried his father's name like a burden and a promise. The crumpled notice from the bank, tucked in his pocket, burned hotter than any brand. 30 days left before foreclosure. 30 days before he lost not just land, but legacy. It was then Cornelius Slade had found him in the saloon, slouching over an empty whiskey glass while the whole room pretended not to watch. Slade, with his gold teeth flashing in the lamplight, was the kind of man who never made an offer without barbs hidden beneath. "Marry my daughter, Adelaide," Slade had drawled, "and I'll give you the finest breeding cow in the territory, a Holstein, fat and strong. Worth more than your whole place right now." The offer was poison sweet. Slade leaned closer, the stench of tobacco thick between them. "She's not much to look at, but she's got a good heart. And you, Marsh, you need cattle more than pride." Ezekiel's mouth was dry, his eyes fixed on the cracked surface of the bar. "She's willing?" he asked quietly, shame curling through his gut. Slade's laugh was cruel. "She's 26, unmarried, and knows her options. What choice does either of you have now?" Every man in the saloon felt Ezekiel's desperation. Every man knew he was cornered. And so, 3 days later, Ezekiel Marsh stood at the altar of a small wooden church, watching Adelaide Quinn squeeze herself into a brown dress that strained at the seams. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it might have hurt, her face round, her eyes unreadable. The preacher droned on, words slipping past Ezekiel as he thought about the cow waiting in Slade's barn. His salvation, his second chance. "I do," Adelaide said firmly, voice stronger than anyone expected. "I do," Ezekiel echoed, the words catching like dry twigs in his throat. The ring barely fit her finger, but she forced it on, eyes flicking to him with a look that wasn't resignation, nor shame, something sharper, almost amused. And so, with awkward handshakes and muttered congratulations that sounded more like condolences, the deal was sealed. Ezekiel had traded his dignity for a cow and a wife he didn't know. But that night, when Adelaide locked the bedroom door with a key that glinted in candlelight, Ezekiel realized he hadn't just bought survival. He'd walked willingly into a trap. The wagon ride back to Ezekiel's ranch was silent, broken only by the groan of springs beneath Adelaide's weight and the distant howl of coyotes. She carried little, a worn carpet bag and a single leather-bound book she held as though it contained her soul. At the cabin, she didn't wait for Ezekiel's help. She marched inside, straight to the bedroom, and turned the key in the lock. Ezekiel froze, hand on the handle. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Adelaide pulled the curtain closed, cutting off the moonlight. The single candle painted shadows across her face, and the meek bride of the church was gone. "Sit down," she ordered. A chill slid down his spine. "Adele, unlock that door." "My name isn't Adelaide." The words dropped like stones. From her bag, she pulled a roll of papers and spread them across the table. "My name is Catherine Walsh. Adelaide Quinn died of fever 2 years ago. Cornelia Slade needed someone to take her place, someone desperate enough to agree." "That's you." Ezekiel staggered, staring. "Why? Why the charade?" "Because Slade owes me something worth more than cattle." Catherine's voice was iron. "My father owned the water rights to Creek Canyon. Slade murdered him 3 years ago, made it look like a riding accident. He forged the transfer papers, stole everything." Ezekiel's head spun. "You're lying." She tapped the evidence, bank records, witness statements, documents of fraud. "I have the proof. Adelaide found out, threatened to go to the marshal. Slade poisoned her. And now he thinks I'm safely married off. Tonight he'll be drinking at Murphy's saloon, unguarded. That's when I strike." From her bag, Catherine drew a small glass vial, liquid clear as truth. "Poison," she whispered. "Justice." Ezekiel's blood turned to ice. "And you expect me to help you kill him?" "I don't need your help killing him, but you are part of this. You're married to his daughter. When they find his body, you'll be the first suspect." "Everyone knows you're desperate." Ezekiel finally understood the glint in her eyes at the altar. She hadn't married him, she'd framed him, but Catherine didn't know Ezekiel had secrets of his own. Ezekiel watched Catherine's fingers toy with the vial as if it were a weapon forged from glass. She had no idea that the ground beneath her perfect plan was already crumbling. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice calm now, almost weary. "The only mistake I made was thinking you'd understand," Catherine snapped, slipping the vial into her pocket and grabbing the door key. "Stay here. Tomorrow, when they find Slade's body, you'll tell them your wife went to visit her father one last time. It will all be very neat, very believable." "Catherine," Ezekiel said softly, "before you go, there's something you should know about that vial." She froze. Her hand clenched the key so tightly her knuckles whitened. "What about it?" "It's not poison." Catherine blinked. "What?" Ezekiel leaned back against the bedpost, finally allowing himself a small smile. "It's colored water. Bit of salt for taste. I made sure of it." "That's impossible. I bought it in Tombstone from a medicine man who works for me." Ezekiel's voice cut like a whip. "Has for 6 months now, ever since I started tracking every last person who wanted Slade dead. You, Catherine Walsh, most of all." Her face drained of color. She yanked the vial out of her pocket, held it to the candlelight, shook it hard. The liquid shimmered clear and harmless. No, he swore I paid him better," Ezekiel said simply. "You're not the only one who's been wronged by Cornelia Slade. You're not the only one who's been patient." Catherine's hand trembled as she set the vial back on the table. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You've been watching me." "I've been planning," Ezekiel corrected. "That cow he gave us as dowry? It belonged to my family before the drought." He bought my debt from the bank, foreclosed early, and then stole my herd in the night. My father worked that land with his blood just like yours. Slade took everything. From us both. Then why stop me? Catherine demanded, eyes blazing. Why not let me end it tonight? Because death is too quick for him. Ezekiel's voice hardened. He rose from the bed and crossed to the window, gazing out at the moonlit yard. I don't want him dead. I want him ruined. His land, his cattle, his reputation, stripped away piece by piece until he's nothing but dust and disgrace. That's justice. That's what he deserves. Catherine's lips parted, her breath catching. Her perfect plan was dissolving in her hands, but Ezekiel wasn't finished. I've been gathering my own evidence, he said, turning back to her. Every forgery, every theft, every murder. The territorial marshal is already on his way. He'll arrive tomorrow morning with federal warrants. Slade will hang, but he'll hang legally. Her eyes narrowed. You used me. We used each other, Ezekiel replied flatly. The difference is, my plan doesn't end with either of us dangling from a rope. He moved to the bedroom door, slid back the lock, and pulled it open. The night air spilled in, cool and heavy with the scent of dust. Slade's reign ends tomorrow. Not with poison, not with lies, with law. Catherine's shoulders sagged. She dropped into a chair, her fury giving way to something heavier. Defeat. For the first time, Ezekiel thought she looked her age, worn thin by grief and vengeance. But before either could speak again, the sound of pounding hooves shattered the stillness. Ezekiel stiffened. Torches bobbed in the distance, 6 riders cutting. Fast through the darkness, flames licking the night sky. Catherine's head snapped up, eyes wide. They're coming for us, she whispered. Ezekiel blew out the candle, plunging the room into black. Slade's men, he muttered, armed and riding hard. How did they know? He ground his teeth, mind racing. Only a handful knew about his investigation. Only a handful had seen Catherine's face. And then, like a stone in his stomach, the truth landed. The preacher, Ezekiel hissed. Slade owns him. The hoofbeats thundered closer. Catherine clutched the papers to her chest. What do we do? The root cellar, Ezekiel ordered. Under the kitchen floorboards, take the evidence and hide. No matter what happens, don't come out until morning. What about you? I'll give them what they came for. He grabbed his rifle from beside the bed, the cold steel solid in his hands. 6 shots against 6 men. Not good odds, but better than running. Catherine's voice shook. Ezekiel, they'll kill you! Maybe, but if I run now, Slade wins. Your father stays unavenged. My land stays stolen. Adelaide's murder stays hidden. His eyes met hers in the dark. I won't let that happen. And then the first torchlight spilled across the cabin walls, and Slade's voice bellowed through the yard. Ezekiel Marsh, come out now, or we'll drag you out. The hoofbeats slowed to a menacing trot as the riders spread across Ezekiel's yard. Their torches cast jagged shadows against the cabin walls, turning the night into a stage of fire and menace. Ezekiel crouched by the window, rifle steady, eyes scanning the figures outside. Cornelius Slade sat tall in the saddle, torch burning bright in his left hand, rifle cradled in his right. His gold-toothed grin gleamed in the firelight, his face a twisted mask of arrogance. 5 men flanked. Him, rifles at the ready, but it was the 6th rider who froze Ezekiel's blood. The territorial marshal, badge glinting in the torchlight, spurred his horse forward. Ezekiel's stomach sank. The marshal, he whispered. He's supposed to be here tomorrow morning with warrants. Catherine pressed closer to the window, her knuckles white around the bundle of papers. Then why is he here tonight? On Slade's side? Because the truth was staring them both in the face. The marshal wasn't coming to arrest Slade. He'd been working with him all along. Slade's voice boomed across the yard. Ezekiel! Marsh! I know what you've been scheming. Come out now. and maybe we'll let you live long enough to stand trial." Ezekiel swallowed hard, then straightened. He couldn't hide in the shadows forever. He stepped onto the porch, rifle lowered but within reach, the boards creaking beneath his boots. "Evening, Cornelius," he called, voice steady. "Congratulations on the wedding. Your daughter's quite something." Slade threw back his head and laughed, the sound ugly and sharp. "That fat cow? She's no daughter of mine, and you damn well know it. Where is Catherine Walsh?" Ezekiel let his face harden into calm denial. "Never heard of her. My wife Adelaide went to bed early. Long day, you understand." "Stop playing games." The marshal urged his horse forward, his badge catching the light. "We know Catherine Walsh killed the real Adelaide Quinn 2 years ago. We know she planned to murder Mr. Slade, and we know you've been helping her." The words hit Ezekiel like a hammer to the chest. Every piece of evidence he'd gathered, every witness he'd spoken to, every careful step of his 6-month plan, fed directly into Slade's hands by the man he thought would deliver justice. "You're all on his payroll," Ezekiel said quietly, fury rising in his chest like fire. The marshal sneered. "Smart man." Slade dismounted, rifle in hand, his boots crunching against the dry soil. "Did you really think you could outsmart me, Marsh? I've owned this territory for 20 years. I know every move before it's made." But for all his swagger, Slade made the same mistake he had when he murdered Catherine's father. He underestimated the desperation of a man with nothing left to lose. Ezekiel raised his rifle, but not at Slade's chest. He aimed squarely at the torch in Slade's hand. "One mistake, Cornelius," Ezekiel said, finger tight on the trigger. "And what's that?" Slade mocked, stepping closer. "You assumed I was planning to fight fair." The crack of the rifle split the night. The torch exploded in a shower of sparks. Burning oil sprayed across Slade's coat, igniting in an instant. He stumbled back, cursing, beating at the flames as chaos erupted in the yard. The men shouted, horses reared, the marshal barked frantic orders. But Ezekiel was already moving, diving behind the water trough, racking another round into the chamber. In the sudden darkness, the odds had shifted. For the first time, Ezekiel had the advantage. But before the outlaws could regroup, a new sound split the night, the thunder of more hooves. Not 6 this time, but many. From the East Ridge, riders descended, federal deputies, badges flashing in the moonlight. At their head rode the real territorial marshal, his voice booming like a cannon. "Drop your weapons! This is a federal investigation!" Slade's men faltered. The corrupt marshal froze. Catherine stepped out of the cabin, lantern raised high, papers clutched in her other hand. She had never hidden in the cellar at all. She had been signaling the federal riders through the kitchen window. The trap had sprung, but not the way Slade thought. The yard was chaos. Horses screamed, their eyes rolling white in the torchlight. Slade staggered, beating at his burning coat, while his hired guns wavered between raising rifles and dropping them. The corrupt marshal, Warren, spun in his saddle, eyes darting from the approaching deputies to Slade, panic gnawing through his bravado. Then the riders swept into the yard, iron discipline turning the chaos into sudden order. Their badges gleamed like stars in the firelight, revolvers drawn, rifles steady. At their head, Marshal Hayes sat tall, voice sharp and commanding. "Drop your weapons," he thundered. "By federal authority, this property is under investigation." Slade's men hesitated, but the sight of 6 leveled rifles broke their resolve. One by one, they let their guns clatter to the dirt. The only one foolish enough to resist was Warren. He went for his revolver, hand darting toward the holster, but Ezekiel was faster. From behind the trough, his shot cracked through the smoke. Warren screamed as the bullet smashed through his hand, sending the revolver spinning into the dust. He fell from his horse, clutching his ruined fingers, shrieking curses. Catherine Walsh has been working with federal investigators for 3 months, Hayes declared, dismounting as his deputies swarmed the yard. Every bribe, every forgery, every threat documented, every witness statement signed and sealed. The remaining outlaws dropped to their knees, hands raised. Slade still smoldered, his gold-toothed grin gone, replaced by a look of raw disbelief. "No," he muttered, eyes darting from Catherine to Ezekiel. "This was all planned." Catherine stepped forward, lantern held steady, her papers bound tight in her arm. Her voice rang out clear and fierce. "The marriage was real, but Adelaide Quinn wasn't Slade's daughter. She was my sister." Ezekiel's breath caught. The words struck like lightning. "Your sister?" Catherine nodded, tears trembling but unshed. "When Adelaide discovered Slade's forged water rights, she threatened to expose him. She wasn't sick. He poisoned her. He killed her to protect his empire. She died for the truth." Ezekiel's chest tightened. He saw Adelaide in flashes, her soft eyes at the altar, her faint, knowing smile. She hadn't been just a name, in Slade's bargain. She'd been flesh, blood, a sister taken too soon. Slade shook his head violently, as if denial could undo the noose tightening around him. "Lies!" he spat. "All of it!" But Hayes ignored him. He pulled heavy iron shackles from his saddlebag, stepping forward with grim satisfaction. "Cornelius Slade," he said, his voice low but deadly certain, "you are under arrest for murder, fraud, theft, and conspiracy." The click of the cuffs around Slade's wrists echoed like a gunshot. "Marshal Warren," Hayes continued, turning to the man writhing in the dirt, "you are under arrest for corruption and conspiracy to commit murder." Deputies hauled him. To his feet, his protests drowned by the clank of irons. Catherine stood tall, the lantern's glow casting her in sharp relief against the night. Her hands still clutched the papers. The proof, the evidence, the truth her sister had died for. Ezekiel stepped out from behind the trough, rifle slung across his back. His eyes met Catherine's, and for a long moment, neither spoke. The flames still smoldered in the yard, the acrid scent of oil and smoke hanging heavy. But for the first time in months, years perhaps, justice was tangible. "You risked everything," Ezekiel said quietly. Catherine's jaw trembled, but her voice was steady. "So did you." They stood side by side as Hayes's deputies led, Slade and Warren away, their curses trailing into the night. The land still groaned under drought. The ranch was still barren. And their marriage had begun as nothing but a bargain with lies. But the weight of tyranny had lifted. Slade's reign was over. "What happens now?" Ezekiel asked, his voice low. Catherine finally smiled, not sharp, not bitter, but soft, the first true smile he'd seen on her lips. "Now we rebuild. Together. The way Adelaide wanted." The words struck deep, and for the first time since his father's land had begun to die, Ezekiel felt something stir inside him. Hope. The first light of dawn broke over the parched horizon, turning the sky to fire. The yard was quiet now, save for the faint creak of leather as Marshal Hayes's deputies rode away with their prisoners. Slade's curses still echoed faintly across the plains. But the sound was weaker now, like the dying roar of a storm finally broken. Ezekiel stood on the porch of his cabin, rifle leaning against the wall, shoulders sagging beneath exhaustion. His body ached, but his mind was sharper than it had been in months. He watched Catherine as she gathered the scattered papers into neat stacks, tucking them back into her carpetbag. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, as though each folded sheet was a fragment of her sister's spirit being carefully preserved. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't hostile anymore. It was heavy, but in a way that bound them together. Finally, Ezekiel broke it. "So, Your sister." His voice was rough, low. Catherine's hands paused over the bag. She closed it slowly, then turned to face him. "Adelaide was stubborn," she said softly. "When she discovered Slade's forgeries, she believed justice could still be found through the law. She wanted to protect our family's rights, protect the farmers who depended on that water. She never thought he'd—" Catherine swallowed hard. She underestimated what he was capable of, and I underestimated what revenge would do to me. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She had cried them all out long ago. Ezekiel shifted, his weight, his boots grinding against the dusty boards. She must have been brave. Facing a man like Slade takes more than stubbornness. Catherine gave a small, sad smile. Brave, yes, but too trusting. I've been carrying her cause ever since. At first it was about justice, then it became about revenge, and somewhere along the way, I lost sight of the difference. Ezekiel's gaze softened. Tonight, you found it again. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and for once there was no mask, no pretense. And you had every reason to use me, to walk away, but you stayed. Ezekiel gave a humorless laugh. Couldn't exactly leave, could I? You locked the door. That drew a faint chuckle from her, the sound brittle but real. True, but you could have let me go through with it. You could have let me poison him. I've seen too many men die quick, Ezekiel said, voice firm. In the war, on the frontier, everywhere. Death's easy. What Slade feared most was losing everything he'd stolen, watching it all crumble. That's the justice I wanted. The sun edged higher, washing gold over the barren land. The cracked earth still stretched for miles, the fences sagged, the barn half collapsed. The drought hadn't lifted. Survival would still be a daily fight. But for the first time in years, Ezekiel felt the land breathe again, like it might forgive them if given time. Catherine stepped closer, her carpet bag pressed to her chest. Your ranch is failing. My family's land is gone, but together maybe— She trailed off, the unspoken hope hanging between them. Ezekiel studied her, the woman who had arrived in his life as a stranger, a deceiver, a trap. But standing here now, she was something else entirely. An ally. Perhaps even more. Maybe, he said quietly. They stood in silence as the sun rose fully, painting the sky in bands of red and gold. The deputies were gone. The yard was littered with ashes, but the weight of Slade's tyranny had lifted. In its place was something fragile, uncertain, but alive. Catherine glanced toward the horizon, her eyes soft. Adelaide wanted us to rebuild, not just the land but ourselves. She wanted hope. Ezekiel reached down, picked up the rifle and rested it against the wall. His hands were steady now, no longer trembling with rage or desperation. Then we'll give her that, together. Catherine smiled, a true smile this time, unguarded and warm. And for Ezekiel, it was enough. Sometimes the greatest treasures weren't gold or cattle, but the unexpected bond forged in fire, loss, and survival. As the new day stretched across the ranch, Ezekiel Marsh and Catherine Walsh, once strangers, bound by lies, faced the horizon not as enemies, not as pawns in Slade's schemes, but as partners. The drought would break someday. The land would heal. And so, perhaps, would they.